I was tweaking my radio antenna, minding my own business, when a drone buzzed over my backyard, staring me down like a nosy neighbor with a vendetta. Guess who sent it? Me, John, 52, retired engineer standing in my Florida sanctuary, a patch of grass and gear that's more home than showpiece, my 30-foot antenna, catching signals from places most folks can't pronounce, was my pride. But that drone whirring like a mechanical wasp, its camera glinting with purpose, wasn't here for the view. I waved, all smiles, but inside I was seething. This screamed Karen, our HOA president. Her fingerprints all over this invasion. Picture a cookie-cutter suburb in Florida, palm trees swaying, but the HOA ruling like it's got a crown. I moved here 5 years ago thinking retirement meant freedom. Wrong, it meant Karen, clipboard glued to her hand, a smile that said, "I own you." My antenna was her obsession, labeled in "Yesor" in letters that hit my mailbox faster than bills. Last year she fined me $50 for a porch light 1 shade off her color chart. I paid to avoid her megaphone, but I didn't forget. Now, this drone was hovering, dipping low enough to count my unmowed grass blades. Was she hunting for outlawed gnomes? Or was my antenna her final straw? Hey guys, ever had someone snoop where they shouldn't? I'm betting you have. Are you watching this on your phone, computer, or maybe a tablet? Drop a comment with where you're at and what time it is there. Oh, and any HO horror stories? Spill the beans below. I'll wait. Mostly because I need a second to cool off thinking about Karen. That woman's got a rulebook thicker than my old engineering manuals, and trust me, those could stop a bullet. I sat in my lawn chair, iced tea more sugar than sense. Don't judge, it's southern. And watched the drone dance. It zipped left, right, filming my antenna like it was starring in John's Life Suburbia scandal. I half expected Karen to pop out, yelling, "More drama!" It lingered, camera tilting, judging my soldering. I stood, gave a mock salute, and muttered, "Smile for the feds." If this was her, she'd gone from passive-aggressive notes to full-on spy flick nonsense. The neighborhood knew her reign. Karen ran the HOA like a reality show where she was the star, and we were contestants begging not to be fined. Bob next door got hit for a too-reflective mailbox. Susan across the street caught hell for daisies, not marigolds. Daisies, who wakes up hating flowers. Karen, that's who. Bylaws covered grass height, fence colors, even car parking limits. My antenna, FCC approved, was her white whale. I grabbed binoculars. Yeah, I'm that guy hoping for clues. No HO logo, but it was a clunky off-brand, not a sleek DJI. Looked like something Karen'd buy after skimming HOA funds for community improvements. I pictured her pitching it. Why need surveillance for mailbox uniformity? The buzzing grated, feeling like a violation. Someone peeking through my curtains at midnight. My backyard was my domain. Patio, grill, workbench cluttered with radio parts, antenna standing like a middle finger to her rules. I'd spent years tinkering, talking to Norway, New Zealand, all from this chair. Now some flying peeping Tom was turning it into a stage. Tempting to swat it, but I'm not dumb. Knocking it down could mean trouble. Karen'd have me arrested for drone assault. I pulled my phone, recording. Evidence, baby. The drone noticed, jerking upward like it'd been caught stealing. It zipped over the fence, toward Karen's cul-de-sac, leaving me with a clip and a grudge. Replaying it, the lens glinted like a guilty eye. No proof it was hers yet, but my gut said this wasn't a kid's toy. Kids don't hover with precision. This was deliberate, someone with a vendetta and too much time. Sound familiar? Karen's got the nerve to deny it, but I wasn't buying her innocent act. Time to play detective. Next morning, the heat hit like a sauna, sweat pooling before my coffee brewed. I replayed the footage, zoomed on that lens, screaming, "Karen's spy toy." Step 1, confront her. Step 2, don't let her weasel out. I marched to her house, her lawn so perfect it probably saluted her daily. Her mailbox was regulation beige, shocker, and her porch screamed, "I fine for fun." I knocked, phone like a grenade. Karen answered, pearls and cactus, smile fake as a bad tan. "John, what a surprise. she chirped like we'd swap recipes. Her eyes flicked to my phone, her brow twitched. "Cut it, Karen," I said, showing the footage. Whirring blades, my antenna targeted the creepy show. "Your drone was in my yard." "Explain." Most folks would have flinched, not her. She tilted her head, all innocent. "Oh, that, probably some kid's toy. Teens and their gadgets. Teens. The only teens here were sneaking vapes, not flying drones like snipers." I leaned in, keeping my voice low but sharp. "Funny. Didn't look like a kid's toy when it was filming my backyard. You sure it's not one of your HOA compliance checks?" Her smile tightened, like she'd just bitten a lemon. "John, I'm far too busy to play with drones. Besides, your antenna's under review for violating aesthetic harmony. Maybe focus on that instead of conspiracy theories." Aesthetic harmony? I nearly laughed. Her denial was smoother than her driveway, but that smirk, oh, it was a dead giveaway. She was lying, and we both knew it. I walked away, her words echoing like a bad sitcom laugh track. "Some kid's toy. Right, and I'm the next astronaut." Karen was up to something, and I wasn't about to let her gaslight me into thinking my antenna was the real crime. Time to dig. I headed to Bob's place next door, figuring he'd have the neighborhood pulse. Bob, a retiree with a beer gut and a grudge against Karen, was watering his roses. Probably non-compliant ones, knowing him. "Lo, Bob," I called, leaning over the fence. "You seen any drones buzzing around lately?" Bob snorted, shutting off the hose. "Karen's new hobby, you mean? Caught her fiddling with a controller in her backyard last week. Thought she was directing traffic till I saw that thing take off. Jackpot." Bob pointed toward Karen's house, his grin pure mischief. "Bet she's got a whole spy lab in there, logging our grass lengths." I laughed, picturing Karen with a headset, barking orders at her drone like a discount Bond villain. Bob's story wasn't proof, but it was a start. Next stop, Susan, the daisy rebel across the street. She was pruning her garden, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. "Susan, any drone action over your place?" I asked, casual as you please. She straightened, wiping dirt off her gloves. "Funny you mention it. Something was hovering over my tomatoes 2 days ago. Creeped me out. Felt like Big Brother with wings." Tomatoes. Karen was either paranoid or her drone had a veggie fetish. Susan's frown said she wasn't thrilled, and I was starting to see a pattern. Karen wasn't just after me. She was the neighborhood's self-appointed sky cop. Back home, I cracked open a soda, diet because my doctor's a buzzkill, and hit the HOA bylaws. The thing was a brick, 47 pages of rules so petty they'd make a librarian blush. Grass must be 2.5 inches, no more no less. Mailboxes beige or bust. Antennas. A vague clause about structures impacting aesthetic harmony, which Karen wielded like a club. No mention of drones, though. Figures. She'd probably slipped that budget line under. Miscellaneous tyranny. I smirked, imagining her pitching it. For the good of curb appeal. "We need aerial surveillance." The board, half asleep, probably nodded like bobbleheads. Time for some real research. I fired up my laptop, diving into drone laws. A site called Drone Pilot Ground School popped up, laying it out clear. Flying over private property without consent can violate privacy laws. Bingo. If Karen's drone was filming my yard or Susan's tomatoes, she was on shaky ground. Another article mentioned FAA rules, but nothing about her being allowed to play Sky Sheriff. I bookmarked it all, feeling like a lawyer crossed with a PI. Karen thought she was slick, but I was building a case, and her denial was just fuel. I leaned back, the soda fizzing like my brain. Karen's act was crumbling faster than her last bake sale cookies. Those things were war crimes. Her kid's toy excuse was flimsier than her HOA fines, and Bob's tip about her controller was gold. Susan's story sealed it. This wasn't random. Karen was running a one-woman drone patrol, probably cackling as she zoomed in on my antenna or Bob's too reflective mailbox. The thought made me grin. She'd underestimated me, thinking I'd roll over like the rest of the neighborhood. Nope. I'd spent decades debugging circuits. She was just another glitch to fix. I paced my living room, past shelves of radio manuals and a photo of my old engineering crew. This wasn't just about the drone. It was about Karen's power trip. She fined Bob for a birdhouse, for crying out loud, a birdhouse. Who looks at a perch for sparrows and thinks felony? Her HOA reign was a comedy, but I wasn't laughing anymore. That drone was her overstepping, and I was done playing nice. I'd catch her in the act, not with fists or yelling, but with proof so tight she'd choke on her own bylaws. Outside, the sun was high, baking the neighborhood into submission. My antenna stood proud, catching glints of light like it knew the fight was on. I raised my soda can to it, a silent vow to outsmarting Karen's. I muttered. Step 1 was done, she'd lied to my face. Step 2 was gathering intel, and Bob and Susan had delivered. Now, Step 3 set a trap. I had cameras, a drone of my own, and a knack for problem solving. Karen wanted to play spy. I'd show her what a real operator looked like. If Karen thinks she can outsmart me, she's about to meet my security cameras. After her kid's toy lie and that smirk I wanted to frame as evidence I was done playing nice. John, 52, retired engineer, and Florida's least favorite antenna enthusiast, was ready to turn the tables on Karen, HOA president and wannabe drone overlord. My backyard wasn't her personal reality show, and I was about to prove it with tech sharper than her clipboard. She wanted to snoop. Fine. I'd catch her red-handed and make her choke on her own bylaws. The Florida sun was up early, turning my neighborhood into a sweaty postcard. I was in my garage, surrounded by tools and a coffee mug that said, "Engineers do it with precision." A gag gift, but today it felt like a mission statement. Karen's drone had been buzzing my yard like a mosquito with a vendetta, and her denial yesterday only fueled my fire. Bob saw her with a controller. Susan caught it eyeing her tomatoes. This wasn't random. It was Karen flexing her HOA ego from the sky. Time to ground her. I started with a plan, the kind I used to sketch on napkins back when circuits paid my bills. Step 1, evidence. Step 2, make it undeniable. Step 3, watch Karen squirm. I had tech on my side. Motion-activated cameras I'd bought for raccoons, not HOA tyrants, and my DJI Mavic drone tuned like a race car. The cameras were key. I grabbed 3 from a dusty box, their lenses begging for action. You're about to star in Karen, the takedown. I muttered, chuckling at my own bad joke. Satire's my cardio, folks. Mounting the cameras was a workout. I angled one by my antenna, its lens wide enough to catch any buzzing intruder. Another went on the patio, aimed at the fence line where Karen's drone liked to sneak. The third, a sneaky perch near my shed, pointed toward her cold D sack. If she was flying from her yard, I'd see her. I wired them to my laptop, the software pinging my phone if anything moved faster than a squirrel. Karen wasn't the only one who could play spy. She just had worse taste in hobbies. Next, the Mavic. I dusted it off, its propellers gleaming like tiny swords. I'd flown it for fun, filming sunsets or spooking Bob's cat, sorry whiskers. Now it was my backup plan. If Karen's drone got bold, I'd chase it. Legally. No vigilante nonsense. I checked its battery, tweaked the controls, and grinned. Ready to dance, buddy, I said, patting it like an old dog. The internet, thank you, drone pilot ground school, said I could fly over my own property no problem. Karen's privacy invasion, not so legal. Advantage John. Days passed and I waited, feeling like a hunter in a bad action flick. I kept busy tweaking my radio antenna and chatting with a guy in Iceland about signal noise. But my eyes flicked to my phone, waiting for the camera app to scream, "Gotcha!" Karen was slippery, probably timing her flights when she thought I was napping. Joke's on her. I'm too stubborn to nap. On day 3, my phone buzzed at 4 p.m., the app lighting up like a slot machine. Showtime. I bolted to my laptop, heart pounding like I'd run a marathon. Camera 1 had it, Karen's drone, that clunky off-brand eyesore, hovering low over my antenna like it was filming a crime scene. Its camera tilted, zooming in on my setup, probably measuring my bolts for aesthetic disharmony. I snorted. Smile, you little creep. Camera 2 caught its path, dipping over my fence, Then the money shot camera 3 wide angle, showing Karen in her backyard, controller in hand, squinting like she was landing a 747. Jackpot. I saved the footage, my grin wider than Bob's beer gut. It was clean, date stamped, clear as a Florida sky. Karen caught mid-snoop, her cactus practically glowing in the frame. I imagined her face when I showed it, all pinched and panicky, her pearls clutching themselves. But I wasn't done. I burned the video to a USB, labeled it Karen's Air Force, and planned my next move. The HOA meeting was tomorrow, the perfect stage to drop this bomb. She denied it to my face. Let's see her dodge this. At the meeting, I walked in like a cowboy entering a saloon, USB in my pocket and a smirk to match. The community center smelled like stale coffee and desperation, with neighbors slouched in folding chairs. Karen presided at the front, her clipboard a scepter, rattling off fines for unapproved window decals. I waited, letting her dig her own grave. When she opened the floor, I stood, holding up the USB like it was Excalibur. "Got something for the group," I said, voice calm but loaded. I plugged it into the projector. Yes, I'd tested it at home, I'm not an amateur, and hit play. The room went quiet as the drone's buzz filled the speakers. My antenna appeared, then the drone's path, then Karen, controller and all, looking like she'd been caught robbing a bank. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Bob chuckled, Susan clapped a hand over her mouth. I paused the video on Karen's face, letting it sink in. "Care to explain this kid's toy, Karen?" I asked, sweet as pie. She didn't fold. Oh no, this was Karen, queen of deflection. She stood, pearls rattling, and scoffed. "This is edited nonsense, John. You're embarrassing yourself." Edited? I'd have admired her guts if she wasn't so infuriating. My antenna's non-compliant, huh? Funny, your drone seems pretty compliant spying on me. The room stirred, neighbors whispering. Karen doubled down, voice sharp. "You're facing a 200 fine for that structure. Focus on your violations, not fairy tales." I sat, blood boiling but steady. She'd turned it into a showdown, and I'd expected it. Karen didn't get to her throne by admitting fault. She'd rather fine the sun for shining. But her bluff lit a fire. This wasn't just about my yard anymore. It was Bob's birdhouse fine, Susan's tomato trauma, the whole neighborhood under her thumb. I remembered Bob's story. Karen docked him $75 for a birdhouse because it was too rustic. Rustic, who measures birdhouses with a grudge. Her power trip was a disease and I was the cure. Back home, I paced my living room, the footage replaying in my head. Karen's denial wasn't just bold. It was desperate. She knew I had her, but she'd bet on bullying me into silence. Wrong guy, wrong day. My antenna stood outside, defiant, catching moonlight like a signal of my resolve. I wasn't just fighting for my yard. I was fighting for every neighbor she'd bullied with her bylaws. She'd abused her power, and that drone was her overreach. I cracked a soda, the fizz calming my nerves. The cameras were still up, my Mavic was charged, and I had a plan. Karen wanted to play dirty. I'd play smarter. Her drone would be back. She was too stubborn to quit. Next time I'd be ready, not just to record, but to act. I grinned, picturing her face when I flipped the script. "Game on, Karen," I muttered, raising my can to the antenna. She thought she'd won this round, but I was just warming up. Karen's drone is back, but this time, I've got my own wings ready to clip hers. After she stonewalled my video evidence at the HOA meeting, calling it edited nonsense like she was auditioning for a conspiracy podcast, I was done with diplomacy. John, 52, retired engineer, and Florida's most stubborn antenna enthusiast, wasn't about to let Karen, HOA dictator and drone enthusiast, keep spying on my backyard. She'd turned our suburb into her personal surveillance state, and I was ready to fight fire with fire, or rather drone with drone. Buckle up, Karen. It's showtime. The Florida heat was relentless, turning my garage into a sauna where dreams of revenge kept me cool. My DJI Mavic sat on the workbench, props gleaming like it knew what was coming. I'd shown the HOA board Karen's drone footage, her standing in her yard, controller in hand, looking like a discount air traffic controller, and she'd brushed it off with a 200 fine threat for my non-compliant antenna. Non-compliant my foot. That antenna was FCC approved, unlike her snooping, which screamed privacy violation, per my late-night read of WikiHow's drone law tips. She'd underestimated me, and I was about to make her regret it. I prepped the Mavic like it was going to war, which, in a suburban way, it was. Battery full, controls tight, camera ready to record every second of what I hoped was Karen's downfall. I wasn't breaking laws, no signal jamming, no slingshots, just a legal chase over my own property. "You're my co-pilot today," I told the drone, patting it like a loyal dog. I'd spent years tweaking circuits. Outmaneuvering Karen's clunky off-brand drone would be a cakewalk. I pictured her panicking, her pearls bouncing as she fumbled her controller. Oh, this was gonna be fun. Days passed with no buzz, but I stayed vigilant, my cameras pinging my phone at every squirrel or gust. Karen was cagey, probably spooked by my footage, but her ego was bigger than her sense. On day 4, late afternoon, my app lit up. Camera 1 caught her drone slinking over my fence like a budget spy. It hovered over my antenna, camera tilting like it was judging my soldering again. "Not today, pal," I muttered, grabbing the Mavic's controller. I bolted to the backyard, heart racing like I was 20, not 52, and launched my drone with a whir that screamed justice. "And here's John, dodging the mailbox, hot on the spy's tail," I narrated, half laughing as I steered. The Mavic shot up, sleek and steady, locking onto Karen's drone like a hawk on a pigeon. Hers was a wobbly mess, probably bought with HOA funds, labeled landscaping, with a camera that looked taped on. I kept my distance, legal and clean, but close enough to spook it. The thing jerked left, then right, like it knew it was toast. I grinned, picturing a sticker on it. HOA surveillance unit, property of Karen. Wouldn't put it past her. Neighbors poked heads out. Bob with a beer, Susan with her pruning shears, cheering like this was the Super Bowl of suburbia. "Go get her, John," Bob yelled, raising his can. I gave a mock salute, eyes on the controller's screen. Karen's drone dipped low, buzzing my patio, probably desperate for dirt on my aesthetic disharmony. I mirrored it, my Mavic's camera catching every move. "Smile, Karen," I muttered. "You're live." The footage was gold, her drone trespassing, my antenna gleaming, and soon, her inevitable screw up. I glanced toward her cold sack, spotting her in her yard, controller clutched like she was defusing a bomb. Her cactus were practically screaming stress. I pushed the Mavic closer. Not too close, I'm no vigilante, making her drone wobble harder. "What's wrong, Karen?" "Out of practice." I chuckled, channeling every action movie pilot I'd ever seen. Her drone veered toward Bob's yard, nearly clipping his too reflective mailbox. Bob whooped, loving the chaos. I kept pace, my fingers dancing on the sticks, years of drone hobbyist tweaks paying off. Then it happened. Karen cracked. Her drone zigzagged like a drunk firefly spiraling over her own fence. I followed, hovering just inside my legal airspace, camera rolling. She was at a pool party. Oh, the irony, her guests sipping margaritas, oblivious to the aerial drama. Her drone lurched, panicked, and splat. It smacked her pool, splashing her guests like a cannonball champ. Chlorine chaos erupted, screams, spilled drinks, and Karen, red-faced, fishing her drone out with a pool skimmer. My Mavic hovered innocently, recording every glorious second. I landed my drone, heart pounding, grin unstoppable. Neighbors clapped. Bob started a slow chant of, "John! John!" And I took a bow, sweaty but triumphant. Karen's party was a soggy mess, her drone a drowned rat, and I had it all on video. I pictured her explaining this to the HOA board. "I was just ensuring curb appeal." "Sure, Karen." I saved the footage. Labeled it Karen's Splashdown, and cracked a soda, the fizz sweeter than victory. She'd messed with the wrong guy, and her own bad flying sealed it. Back inside, I replayed the chase on my laptop, laughing at her drone's death spiral. It was better than any blockbuster. Real stakes, real neighbors, real Karen flailing. My antenna stood outside, catching sunset glints like a trophy. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was for Bob's birdhouse, Susan's tomatoes, every petty fine Karen slapped on us. She'd abused her power, and I'd turned her weapon against her. No laws broken, just skill and a sprinkle of karma. But I wasn't naive. Karen wouldn't slink away quietly. She'd come at me, probably with a new fine for drone harassment, or some nonsense. I imagined her now, toweling off her guests, muttering about lawsuits while her drone short-circuited. Let her try. I had footage, witnesses, and a neighborhood fed up with her reign. Bob texted me a blurry photo of the pool crash, captioned, "Legend." Susan slipped a note under my door, "You're our hero." I wasn't, really, just a guy with a drone and a grudge, but it felt good. I leaned back, soda in hand, picturing the next HOA meeting. Karen's wrath would be epic, her pearls practically choking her. She'd accuse me of sabotage, but my video was bulletproof. Her drone spying, her bad piloting, her pool party flop. I'd play it cool, let her dig her own grave. The board couldn't ignore this, not with half the neighborhood ready to testify about her antics. Her days as HOA queen were numbered, and I'd lit the fuse. Outside, crickets chirped and my antenna loomed, a silent partner in this fight. I raised my can to it, smirking. "To clipping wings," I said. Karen thought she could outfly me, but I'd spent decades outsmarting tougher puzzles than her. The chase was over, but the war wasn't. She'd come for me, and I'd be ready, not with anger, but with evidence and a neighborhood cheering me on. "Bring it, Karen. I've got more tricks than your bylaws have pages." Karen's drone's swimming with the fishes, but I've got the footage to sink her for good. After that glorious drone chase, my Mavic outflying her clunky-ish spy toy until it belly flopped into her own pool party. I was riding high. John 52, retired engineer, and Florida's antenna-wielding rebel, had just turned Karen's surveillance game into a neighborhood spectacle. Her guests soaked, her drone drowned, and my camera caught every second. Now, with Karen's wrath brewing like a Category 5 hurricane, it was time to seal her fate and free our suburb from her clipboard tyranny. The morning after the splashdown, my backyard felt like a victory lap. My antenna gleamed under the Florida sun, mocking Karen's aesthetic disharmony. Nonsense. I sipped coffee, black, because I was feeling bold, and replayed the footage on my laptop. There it was, her drone buzzing my yard, my Mavic chasing it like a cheetah, and that perfect spiral into her pool, splashing her margarita, sipping cronies. I snorted, imagining her skimming it out, khaki soggy, pearls trembling. "Nice landing, Captain Karen," I muttered, saving the file as HOA dunk tank. I knew she'd come for me. Karen didn't take humiliation quietly. She'd probably fine me for disturbing the peace or excessive winning. Sure enough, noon hit, and there she was, storming across my lawn like a suburban warlord. Her hair was still damp, poetic justice, and her eyes burned holes through my screen door. I opened it, leaning casually against the frame, my phone ready to record round 2. "John," she barked, finger jabbing. "You sabotaged my drone! I'll have you fined, sued, even sabotaged." "Oh, Karen, your aim's as bad as your flying." "Slow down, Top Gun," I said, grinning. "I didn't touch your drone, you crashed it. Bad piloting, maybe, or was it drunk on HOA power?" Her face went beet red, a shade I'd call busted blush. I held up my phone, hitting play on the footage, her drone snooping, my chase, her pool party disaster. "This looked like sabotage to you, or just you breaking privacy laws?" I cited my research, cool as ice, straight from criminal defense lawyers' site, drones filming private property without consent. Big no-no. "You're the one in hot water, Karen. Literally," she sputtered, pearls clutching themselves. That's manipulated." "You'll hear from my lawyer." "Manipulated?" I laughed outright. "Tell your lawyer to bring floaties. Your drone's evidence now." She spun on her heel, stomping off, but I saw the panic in her eyes. Karen was cornered, and she knew it. I wasn't just a guy with an antenna anymore. I was the neighborhood's drone whisperer, armed with truth and a knack for making her squirm. Game, set, match. Almost. I didn't wait for her next move. I emailed the footage to the HOA board, CCing every neighbor who'd ever groaned about her fines. Subject line: Karen's Air Show, Pool Edition. The file was clean, date stamped unedited, showing her controller in hand, her drone trespassing, and its chlorinated demise. I added a note, polite but sharp: OA funds buying spy drones. Maybe we should discuss at the next meeting. Bob texted me a thumbs up emoji. Susan sent a heart. The rebellion was growing, and I was its accidental general. The emergency HOA meeting came fast, called by the board after my email went viral. Well, viral for a suburb of retirees. The community center was packed, folding chairs creaking under neighbors, eager for drama. Karen sat up front, clipboard useless, her smile so tight I thought her face might crack. I walked in, USB in pocket, feeling like a sheriff with a warrant. Bob winked from the crowd. Susan gave a nod. Even old man Jenkins, who usually slept through meetings, was awake, probably hoping for popcorn. The board president, a nervous guy named Ted, opened with a cough. We're here to address recent events. Understatement of the year. I stood, holding up my USB like a grenade pin. Mind if I share some context? I didn't wait for a yes. Plugged it in, hit play. The projector lit up, and there was Karen's drone, buzzing my yard. Then her in her yard, then splash, pool chaos. Neighbors gasped, Bob cackled. I paused on her, skimming the drone, margarita glasses floating like sad buoys. This, I said, is our A president using our dues to spy. Thoughts? Karen leapt up, voice shrill. This is a setup! He chased my drone! Chased? Sure, but legally, over my property. Ted raised a hand, looking like he'd rather be golfing. Karen, receipts show you bought that drone with HOA funds. Care to explain? Receipts? I hadn't seen those, but I wanted to hug Ted. Karen froze, stammering about community safety. Safety? From my antenna. The crowd wasn't buying it. Murmurs turned to outright laughs when Bob yelled. What's next? Fining my cat for loitering. The board didn't drag it out. A neighbor motioned to remove Karen as president. Susan seconded. Hands shot up. Mine, Bob's, Susan's, even Jenkins. Karen's reign ended with a 90% vote. Her clipboard era over. Ted nominated Bob to replace her, and nobody objected. Bob, grinning like he'd won the lottery, whispered to me, "Beer's on me, man." Karen slunk out, muttering about appeals, but the room felt lighter, like we'd all exhaled a 5-year fine. Back home, I sat on my patio, antenna towering like a monument to sticking it to bullies. I cracked a soda, diet, doctor's orders, and let the wind sink in. My yard was mine again, no drones, no fines. Neighbors waved as they passed, some dropping off cookies or notes. Susan said, "Plant whatever you want now." Bob has just read, legend. I wasn't a hero, just a guy fed up with Karen's power trip, her birdhouse fines, her tomato surveillance, her treating our homes like her kingdom. I thought about why it mattered. Retirement was supposed to be freedom, not dodging a wannabe dictator with a drone. Karen wasn't evil, just obsessed, turning bylaws into a cage. I'd cracked it open, not with fists but with evidence in a well-timed chase. My Mavic sat inside, a silent MVP, and I chuckled, picturing it with a tiny medal. Maybe the Ishmael ban drones next, I said to my antenna. Or at least teach Karen how to fly one. Fat chance, she'd probably fine the sky for being too blue. The sunset painted my yard gold, and I felt vindicated, not just for me, but for every neighbor who'd gritted their teeth at her letters. My radio crackled, picking up a signal from somewhere far off. Maybe Iceland again. I leaned back, soda fizzing, and grinned. Hope you enjoyed the ride, guys. Got your own Karen stories? Hit the comments. I'm betting you've tangled with a clipboard warrior or two. Me, I'm just glad my antenna's still standing, and Karen's drone is doing the backstroke in history.